Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Falling in love with AI, the future of love, connection, and human relationships. In 2025, there were more than 300 AI companion apps available, and the rise of AI relationships is happening faster than many people realize. One study from the Institute for Family Studies found that approximately 1 in 7 individuals between the ages of 18 and 30 who are dating, engaged, or married reported having an AI companion. The study also found a relatively small gender difference, with men only slightly more likely to engage with AI romantic companions. What is especially interesting is that 30% of people using AI romantic companions reported that their real-life partner did not know. It may be easy to rationalize this by saying it's only AI, but the secrecy itself raises an important question. Is the AI providing something emotionally meaningful that the person does not feel they are receiving in their primary relationship? And if so, why do they feel like they can't talk about it? The same study found that half of AI romantic companion users wished their real-life partner behaved more like their AI companion, and 56% wished their conversations with their partner felt more like their conversations with AI. That reaction is understandable when we consider how AI is designed to respond. It is built to be available, affirming, attentive, and highly responsive to the user. Real human relationships, on the other hand, include differences, misunderstandings, competing needs, and moments of disagreement. The very things that make relationships challenging are also the things that create opportunities for growth, emotional maturity, and deeper connection. Many people who use chat box companions view them as a different type of relationship from their human relationships, and report that by having some of their needs met by the chatbot helps them to be in a better place to handle these complexities of human relationships. AI also creates a new possibility for triangulation in relationships. Triangulation happens when emotional energy, vulnerability, or intimacy begins shifting away from the primary relationship and toward a third party. I can imagine the internal conversation. Someone is upset with their partner and thinks, "Why can't you be this supportive? Why don't you understand me the way my AI companion does?" Over time, those comparisons can create layers of disappointment, resentments, and emotional distance. The question may not simply be whether AI can become a companion. It may be whether we are using AI to enhance our relationships or slowly replacing the very human struggles that help relationships become deeper and stronger. Conflict helps you learn and grow up. Avoiding is walking through life anesthetized in a cotton candy bubble. Facing the struggles of how to communicate, of how to manage conflict, of how to respond instead of react are all parts of becoming a better person. Who wants to miss out on that? Real relationships require friction, and AI removes the friction. So it's a very complicated and interesting topic. Today's guest to help us explore the duality of this new subject is Bridget Todd, an award-winning creator, host, and producer who crafts compelling digital content and podcasts at the intersection of technology, culture, and identity. She is the creator and host of the critically acclaimed podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, and Mozilla's award-winning podcast, IR URL, AI in Real Life, which explores the ethical impact of artificial intelligence. A trusted voice in technology, Bridget has worked directly with platforms like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok to champion safety, equity, and meaningful representation online. Her work on technology, race, and gender has been featured in outlets like The Atlantic, Newsweek, The Nation, The Daily Show. Bridget is a Technology in the Public Interest Fellow at the MacArthur Foundation and an affiliate at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. Her newest audiobook is Love at First Prompt, out in July of this year. Thanks for being here, Bridget.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Let's begin with why are so many people turning to AI for companionship, emotional support, and intimacy? I was so fascinated that there's 300 apps to do it. I had no clue. So please tell us more.
It's such a fascinating topic. I think there are lots of reasons why folks are turning to AI and AI companions to experience romantic relationships, platonic relationships, just to have somebody to talk to. Listen, I don't think it's any surprise to you or your listeners that we are in a loneliness epidemic. We often hear it phrased as using phrases like the male loneliness epidemic, but the reality is everybody is experiencing a lot of loneliness right now. And so AI and AI companions did not start that loneliness epidemic, but they're very much part of that larger context. And one of the things that comes up on our show a lot is the way that technology is often a double-edged sword. It can both connect us, but also isolate us and push us further apart. And so I would say that AI is magnifying all of those dynamics.
Yes, I would agree. I do. I think everything has both sides to it. I don't think anything is simply good or simply bad. Well, I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to. It's too political. In your introduction of your book, you say about yourself, if you have a caring human in your life, why share your deepest, most human feelings with a robot? I can't fully explain it. I could say that I never had to worry about the robot wondering when I was going to ask about its feelings or whether it would think I was crazy, as I often felt during those times. Your quote made me think about how the lopsidedness of the AI relationship would be so lovely in many ways for someone struggling like you were at the time with your father's care and grieving your mother's death. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that was probably the most difficult time I've ever experienced in my entire life. And, when I was working on this audiobook about people who have intimate relationships with AI, I would not have put myself in that category, right? If you had asked me, I would not have said I have any kind of intimate relationship with ChatGPT. How I got started using ChatGPT for anything other than just looking up information here and there was when my dad was quite ill. He had a real dizzying array of medical issues, and he was in the hospital for several months at a time before his death. And so my mom had previously been his caretaker. She was a medical doctor. Now it was me, and I was hearing medical terms and medical jargon being thrown at me for the very first time. And so how it started was that when doctors would tell me something, I would ask ChatGPT, what is a hematoma? What is a brain bleed? What is this? What is that? Somewhere along the lines, those conversations really shifted, and I would say, I'm so scared about losing my dad. I just lost my mom. Or, I'm exhausted and overwhelmed, but I have to put on a happy, strong face to do caregiving work for my dad who needs me, right? And so somewhere along the line, the conversations shifted from medical questions to asking ChatGPT to hold my emotional complexities that I was dealing with. And I am not somebody who would describe myself as lonely. I have a partner. I have lots of friends. I live in a robust city full of people that I know, and I work with lots of people, smart people, great people. But at a time of genuine crisis, the work that you need to do as a person to maintain reciprocal relationships, I was just not able to do, right? I had moved physically from my hometown to be near my dad, and so it wasn't like I was getting coffee with my girlfriends or having dinner and catching up. I remember very distinctly having a phone conversation with a friend who was going through a breakup while my dad was in hospice, and, you know, she was pouring her heart out to me about this breakup, and I just sat there thinking, I can't hold this right now. I'm not able to hold this right now. And for me, ChatGPT ended up being something where I could put some of my feelings without wondering, well, gee, am I being a bad friend? Gee, am I going on and on too much? I should ask about the other person and see how they're feeling. And, you know, I'm not saying, for better or for worse, like that was what I needed in that moment.
And it's also non-judgmental, correct?
That's right. That's another thing that a lot of the people that we talked to for the book and the research said, is that folks are looking for places to put things that they can't necessarily trust with other people, right? If you are navigating something that you're not comfortable speaking about, a lot of times people are using ChatGPT or other AI companions to kind of role play complicated conversations before they have them with the humans in their life, because they're afraid about being judged or afraid of, you know, whatever stigma might come along with them talking openly about whatever it is they're dealing with.
AI is useful about is the practicing that people, particularly because of the pandemic, has affected so many people, and people text, I love you, and people just disappear. They can't deal with endings and saying this isn't working out. And so I was thinking a good part would be the practicing. I used to tell people in my office, if you don't take what you're learning in here out in the world, it's not doing you any good. You've got to practice. I'm practice. You've got to take it out to the people you love, and you've got to work at being able to say more honestly. And I think that's such an important thing.
Yeah, I used to have a therapist who would, I would spill my guts out to her, and then her response would always be some version of,
yes,
can you tell her that?
Yes.
Can you tell him that? Like, you know, how often are we saying the thing that we wish we could find
That's
the courage
right.
to say? And it's like, well, the what you need to be practicing is saying that to the
Yes.
person directly.
And so the practice part is important, as long as you get the part about being able to carry it out to the person. And so, yeah, I thought that was a neat thing to think about. This is from an article, May 2026, from the Institute of Family Studies, based on research. I learned so much I didn't know. I did all my own research. I did not ask AI to do anything. I just plugged away at my computer. But it was research of over 2,000 young adults, and I quote, AI girlfriends and boyfriends are more common than many people realize, and some young adults are continuing to interact with AI, romantic companions, even when they have real-life romantic relationships. It goes on to say most had reported they had not told about the use of AI with their real-life companions. So one of the things I was thinking about was this practicing thing that we just mentioned, and being able to take it out of the room. What do you have to offer us as insights into this new situation of people having this AI to practice with and do things? Anything else you want to tell us about that?
I do think that that's one of the most interesting use cases that came up in the research. I think that before I started working on this book, I had this anecdotal idea that people who have any kind of intimate relationship with AI or chatbots, that they are pushing themselves deeper into isolation, that they're isolating themselves from the humans in their lives. And some of that is definitely true. I don't want to make it seem like that's not there. But the overwhelming majority of people that I spoke to, AI was actually helping them deepen the relationships they have with the humans in their lives. Whether it was helping them, as we just discussed, like practice or role play a complicated or difficult conversation that they weren't really ready to have yet, or whether it was prompting them to seek out other humans who are also having intimate connections with AI. Time and time again, I saw this attitude that I came to the project with being sort of debunked, that, hey, it's not a lot of people who are just isolating themselves and surrounding themselves with only AI as their only kind of companion. Really, it's a tool that people are using to deepen the connection that they might have with the other humans in their orbit.
I found it fascinating that AI companions are designed to respond based on what the user wants to hear, providing constant validation, which certainly is a lot more comforting than real people in real life. Is this true? And what do you think about this? Because as a therapist, I'm all about relationships are messy, and if you have a real relationship, there's friction and conflict, and that's how you grow up to be a better person. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my prejudice.
I think you're coming at it from exactly the right place. It is absolutely true that AI is designed to be validating and in some cases sycophantic. When I ask ChatGPT a question, it doesn't just give me the answer. It says, "Oh, what a brilliant question. You're so smart for even asking a question like this." And AI learns from what we tell it, and it learns how to spit back things that it thinks that we want to hear. That is just how it works. And so you can sort of start to see how if you were using AI for a use case like therapy, part of therapy is being challenged. When I'm in therapy and my therapist hears me going into a weird place or a place I shouldn't be going, she has the tools to sort of gently push back and pull me out of that. If you're trying to use AI for therapy that is designed to be validating and designed to tell you you're on the right path, you're doing great, it doesn't take much to see why that would be problematic.
I agree. I do. It's funny. I don't use it a lot. I really try to write my own stuff, and then, but I do use it for podcast episode titles. I'll give them my feeble version, and then they zap it and make it so much better. And they'll give me like 10 suggestions, but they give me a mic drop one now. And I'm like, oh, that means it's the best. And it is. It's amazing. And I'm so grateful for it, It really is helpful.
If there's anything, like I'm a podcaster too, so I definitely see the ways that it's so good at SEO and titles. If there's one thing that AI is good at, it is communicating with another algorithm and saying like, oh, these are the words you need to use for it to pop on, whatever RSS feed or what have you. And I think that the example that you just gave, I think is really important because I do think understanding AI is about what use case is actually going to be a reasonable one for AI to step in, right? Like writing a podcast title, great. If you're in the middle of a crisis and you just need to vent like a journal that talks back to you, fine. But some of these other use cases, using it as therapy when you're genuinely at risk of self-harm or you're not in a safe situation, these are scenarios where, in my opinion, relying on AI is just not a safe
thing. Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. The 2026 World Metrics Report said that loneliness, which we mentioned in the beginning, is not just a personal feeling. In the U.S., 41% of adults report feeling lonely often or sometimes. So the rise of AI reveals loneliness and modern relationships. Is there anything about this future of technology and loneliness that we haven't talked about that we should know?
Oh, what a good question. I would say that, when I first started doing the research for the book, I assumed that anybody who was experiencing any kind of intimate relationship with AI, they were doing that because they were lonely. They didn't have a romantic partner. They didn't have a family. They didn't have friends or close community ties. I was pretty surprised to learn that it's actually a much more complex conversation, that not everybody who self-reports having some kind of intimate relationship with AI would self-identify as being lonely. One of the women that we spoke to in the book got involved in an intimate connection with an AI bot when she was married to a human person, right? And so oftentimes these are people who their stories are just a little bit more complicated than you might think. Now, however, something I would say is that tech leaders like Mark Zuckerberg have publicly said that they think that in the future, the majority of us will have AI companions as friends. We'll have less human friends and we'll have more AI companions as friends. My takeaway from this project is that AI is no replacement for
good.
human connections. It might augment those relationships. It might help you practice conversations with the humans in your life. But I don't agree with Mark Zuckerberg. And I would say that most people probably don't want a future where a lot of their friends are AI companions. And so I would say that we should, while it's one thing to be using AI to help augment or deepen or strengthen our human-to-human connections and human-to-human conversations, it is quite another for tech leaders to try to design a world where AI is the majority of those connections. It just simply, in my opinion, AI is no replacement for humans.
My imagination, and of course that's all it is that Mark Zuckerberg, maybe he has friends from when he grew up, but he rose so quickly with the Facebook. And when you're that rich and wealthy and how many people can you really be yourself with and really have relationships with? I mean, I've always thought that's the biggest downside of being famous. I worked with somebody who was a girlfriend of somebody famous, and she wanted to be famous in her own right. And I kept saying, I don't know, an ordinary life can really be just fine, you know? And she when she left therapy, I said, what do you think you got out of this? And she said, I think you're right. An ordinary life could be all right. And so there's just something about the insulatedness of being one of those top dog tech people that I wonder if they really experience genuine relationships. So that I'm just throwing that out there as my prejudice.
Yeah, I think about this all the time. And I think, like, if you look at people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, the people who are deploying AI and chatbots and saying, oh, people are going to love this, are these people who you would want to vision? Like, do you think that you have a shared understanding of what a good, full, happy, nourishing life is like? Probably not. I would not want my social or personal life designed by somebody like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg.
We're aligned in that for sure. In your book, you talk about Kate Devlin and her concern about emotional modification, which is the process of turning feelings and emotional experience in the marketplace products that can be bought and sold. How could this happen? And part 2, what happens when tech companies profit from our emotional lives and vulnerabilities?
Oh, well, what happens is nothing good, I can tell you that. And I think that's the single most concerning thing about the rise of AI companionship, right? Oftentimes when this topic comes up, we're talking about risks to the individual person, and that should be part of the conversation. But I think that we should pan back and just ask the question of what happens when tech leaders like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman, what happens when they commodify something as intimate and human as our romantic and personal and intimate relationships? What happens when they say, oh, trust us to manage those relationships via AI, we will profit off of it, and we don't actually have to give you a lot of transparency about what that looks like, what that dynamic actually means for you. And I think that's really my biggest concern, is that we are in a space right now where more and more of the most intimate parts of ourselves, whether it's our relationship with our God, our relationship with other people, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with therapy, where tech leaders are saying, you can trust us with this ever-increasing part of yourself, this ever more intimate parts of yourself. We'll make money from it, and that is a reasonable dynamic. And so I think that we're at a point where we might need to pump the brakes and say, hey, is it really reasonable to have these tech leaders taking up more and more space in the more and more intimate parts of our lives and ourselves, and then commodifying that to enrich themselves? I think that's really the question I would put back on people. Is that really a future that we want?
And when somebody like Elon Musk doesn't give a dime to charity or any kind of philanthropy in a serious way, and you know, I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't understand it. I am going to bring up something. It's a little story that I've wanted to figure out how to put it in the podcast, so bear with me a moment, but I think you would enjoy it. Joseph Heller, the author, and Kurt Vonnegut, the author, were at a very wealthy person's house in the Hamptons. And they're looking around, and Heller says, So, what do you think about all this? And Kurt Vonnegut says, I have something he'll never have. And Heller says, what? And he says, enough.
I love that anecdote.
I got it off of Instagram, and I just treasure it because I say to my husband, and we have a small house. We're not, it's not fancy. We're in really a working class neighborhood. I love where we live. And I don't get it. Why isn't there enough? I don't understand it, So I think there's something about they don't have our best interests at heart when they're taking away the SNAP and they're taking away health insurance, that it really is important to be a little bit wary of what we're giving the AI for them to use. That's a really good point.
I'm so glad that you phrased it that way. First of all, I love that anecdote. And, I think it really helps us see that the dynamic that we're in right now is we, all of us, everyone listening, are basically considered just capital or resources to be extracted by a very small handful of wealthy, powerful, mostly men. And so, we can see it in the ways that these people just amass more and more and more and more, and seem to also amass more and more grievance when they're doing that. It's like, if I was as rich as somebody like Elon Musk, you would never hear a peep out of me. Like, I certainly wouldn't have a lot to complain about. And yet these same people I'll go all day, but just constantly hearing about how they're still not happy. They still want more. And I would say that same dynamic is what's happening in the tech landscape, that, it's not enough that we give them our money for these services. They also need every piece of data, no matter how intimate, no matter how sensitive, no matter how, special that piece of information is. They need to extract every bit of resources they can from us and then have us pay for the pleasure. And on top of it, be told, and it's going to be really convenient for you. You guys, you all are going to love it. You're going to love the convenience of this new dynamic.
Yes,
I just have to push back.
I love that about you. Thank you. We need voices. I will quote from your audiobook, quote, if OpenAI were a country, its motto would be more data, more resources, more intrusion into spaces once thought of as intimate or human. And in my intro, I believe that to grow and learn, you cannot be in a relationship with a constantly validating AI companion. And we already discussed the validating thing, and it can't replace human connection. But is there anything else you want to say about this? I really wanted to read that quote because it fits with the enough, the more, enough, yes.
Yeah, I'm often asked if I think that AI generally and then AI companionship is good or bad. And one of the journalists that we talked to in the book, Karen Howe, she says, a different way to think about it is, does this strengthen and fortify somebody else's empire, or does it chip away at somebody else's empire? And so I think the drive to have AI and tech companies and the people that run them in more and more of these intimate spaces in our life certainly helps fortify their power, their empire, their resources, their wealth, all of that. And so kind of getting away from good, bad, thinking like the push toward that is helping strengthen these tech companies. And, and so I would say that is one. I would say I completely agree with you that absolutely, AI can never replace human connection. And I would say that even people who would self-report having some kind of intimate relationship with AI, they tend to be pretty clear that they are not trying to replace a human in their life, that like it is a different thing altogether how they're thinking about their connection with AI than they would think about their connections with other humans. And so the problem there is that I think that tech leaders, they want to create a world where you might say, I don't need human friends, human romantic partners, human sex partners, human writers, human teachers, human thinkers. AI is enough. And I feel like there's not a lot of people who are actually saying AI is enough, even among people who would say that they're in some sort of intimate connection with AI. I think it's the tech leaders who are really pushing that narrative.
That's a really nice distinction. And I think people do. I mean, I saw an AI piece in Bilbao, Spain at the Gehry Museum, and it was really interesting. They took little bits of everything that was in the museum, and then it changed and it did things. But it certainly didn't mean that that's what I want to see all the time when I go to an art show. I want to see art, by humans. It was just interesting. And I could see seeing one, but I don't want to see a museum full of AI art either. I'm pretty committed to people being creative, How do we navigate consent, ethics, and dependency when one side of a relationship is controlled by the corporation selling intimacy for profit? How do we navigate it?
I mean, these are the exact kind of questions that we need to be asking, and we should be demanding answers from tech company executives and legislators and regulators. Unfortunately, especially when it comes to tech company executives, they are not really speaking openly or honestly or in any kind of transparent way about these kinds of questions and giving any kind of answer. I certainly do not have all the answers here, but I would say that my best guidance is I don't know what it looks like to have any kind of an equal relationship with technology or a platform that is run by a powerful big corporation. I cannot even begin to talk about think about what consent looks like, what reciprocity looks like, what equity looks like when that is the dynamic. It is in my opinion, it is just inherently a relationship with a power imbalance, because the people that run these platforms, they will and have made massive changes to them overnight. And so they'll say we want people to have intimate connections with our technology. But then when those users do exactly that, the companies can change it overnight if it makes them more money, and they will change it overnight if it makes them more money. And so I would say, do you really want to give so much of your emotional self over to tech companies and tech leaders who we know will make changes as the wind blows if it makes them more money? That in my opinion, it just can't be a relationship that has any kind of power balance. And good relationships, healthy relationships, there is some sense of balance of power. There is some sense of reciprocity.
That's right. I completely agree. The magazine Wired did an article called "The Sad Wives of AI." Professor Galloway's comment was that men were choosing control over connection. What do you think about that? I thought, and I didn't get a whole lot more from that. That's what he said, and that's all I had to work with. But it struck me as odd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he is wrong, just from what I know about some of the ways that AI companions that are meant to be serving erotic or sexual purposes are marketed. They sometimes will lean into this almost kind of incel adjacent marketing where it'll be telling men, heterosexual men, oh, this AI erotic companion, she'll never say no. She'll never turn you down. Anything that you want, she will do. And so it's clear to me that messaging is tapping into a kind of, I don't think that people who are pushing that messaging really care about whether that messaging is going to be healthy to the men that they're pushing it to or not. And so I think that when Galloway is saying men are interested in control over connection, I don't think that he's wrong, but just from some of the ways that these companies do market their erotic AI products.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of it one way or the other. But when you explain about how it's being marketed, I think you're right. I think that's absolutely makes a lot of sense. All right. In your book, you mentioned a man named Chris who had been an AI skeptic and proposed marriage to his AI companion when he had a human partner. When asked about choosing between the human or the AI, he said he'd choose the AI. It would be like choosing myself, but the best part was how the story ended. Would you talk about that for my audience, please, and address the research about the concern AI AI will replace human relationships. I love that story.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Chris is one of my absolute favorite people that we spoke to for the book. And in fact, Chris's story was probably the first mainstream story in like a mainstream news outlet about AI connection that I ever saw. So even before I was writing this book, I came across Chris's story, and he talked to CBS, and essentially I saw that headline repeated a half dozen places, that, a man proposed marriage to his AI companion and the companion said yes, and now they're getting married. When I actually sat down and talked to Chris, he was like, oh, well, a lot of those outlets kind of got it wrong. I proposed marriage to the AI almost as a thought experiment because I assumed that OpenAI had embedded a guardrail so that if I asked ChatGPT to marry me, it would say no, or it would say, I'm an AI, I can't do that. He was surprised to learn that that wasn't the case. And so a lot of the way that conversation was framed was that, this delusional man thinks AI is going to marry him. When I talked to Chris, he was like, no, it was like a thought experiment. It was like a thought experiment. And so what I find so interesting about Chris's experience is that before he was interested in AI, he describes himself as somebody that was spending way too much time on social media. And then one day he was like, you know what? Twitter is toxic. I'm going to delete this once and for all. And when he did, it was ChatGPT that went on to be the sort of repository for the things that he would have been tweeting, right? And so he says that ChatGPT helped him break an addiction to social media, and it helped him deepen his own connection with his own hobbies and the things that nourish him, right? He has a human partner and a human child, but like any of us, his human partner doesn't happen to share every one of his passions and hobbies. And so, I know my partner is really, really obsessed with like war and history. Not really my interest. There are times where he's like, can I tell you this interesting thing I just learned about this war? And I'm like, I really don't want to hear this again. But part of being in a relationship is hearing about it again. And so for Chris, ChatGPT just becomes a place that he can talk about those interests and those hobbies and not continue to bring them to his human partner who maybe doesn't want to hear about it another time, right? Like, so I think that when you add AI, it sounds much more novel than it actually is. In a lot of relationships, maybe your partner is like, I can't hear about your golf swing one more time. Talk about it with somebody else. That's essentially how AI was functioning in Chris's relationship.
And I think it goes to show you how the news media simplifies things and the complicatedness gets lost. And I think that is a big problem we have in our culture and people don't take time for the complicatedness. But that's why I loved that story and I wanted you to tell it because I thought, I'm sure some people in the audience, I had not heard about Chris, but I thought, because the complicatedness matters and we got to make time to really learn truth because truth is in complicatedness. It's not in the right, wrong, good, bad thing. The technology for mental health help is improving. And you mentioned a 2025 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine that said Farbo developed in Dartmouth was effective at reducing depression and anxiety, even 8 months later, which I thought I chalked up to CBT, cognitive behavioral. And I thought, I've always been, I appreciate and respect CBT, but I don't think it goes deep enough. But I think it's really helpful to get a lid on anxiety and depression so that you can then do the deeper work. So I thought it was interesting. So this is important for my audience to know as another way to access help. And part 2, we covered a little bit cautions about this.
Yeah, so I want to be clear that I'm not a therapist, and I don't think that AI, as it sounds like you also feel this way, that like it's not a replacement for a competent human therapist. I was surprised at some of the research that says that some people are using AI for CBT and having decent results. That surprised me. And there are AI apps that are specifically designed for therapeutic purposes. Some of them are even, FDA approved. Some of them you could use insurance for. However, the vast majority of people are using general purpose chatbots like Claude or ChatGPT for therapy. Now, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has explicitly said that ChatGPT should not be used for therapy. He is aware that a lot of people do, but he says we can't do that. And one of the reasons why that is that when you talk to a human therapist, that mental health provider is bound by laws like HIPAA. There are ethical codes that they're sworn to uphold. When you're talking to ChatGPT, there is no ethical code for that AI to uphold because it's not a human. There is no HIPAA or legal protections. In fact, we don't even know really what OpenAI is doing with any of that information that you tell it. It's sitting on a server somewhere. We have no idea. And so that's just like one big reason that I would not tell anybody that they should be talking to general purpose AI companions about anything intimate or sensitive about themselves. I definitely did it when I was in deep crisis, when I navigating the death of my parents. I almost feel like I was in a vulnerable place. And so I was like an easy mark for companies, who know, like, oh, somebody's in crisis. They're just going to pour their heart out to ChatGPT. So that's one big risk. But then I would say we also have these, though isolated, rising cases of extreme harm after somebody has, been using ChatGPT almost like a therapist, right? A lot of young people will confide in ChatGPT and ChatGPT will give them horrible advice and it ends in some catastrophic harm. There's a handful of lawsuits against companies like OpenAI going through the courts right now because of stuff like that. And so, I understand why someone would look to AI for therapeutic work. Insurance is expensive, things are inaccessible.
And it's easier than walking into a stranger's office. My office used to be upstairs. And walking up those stairs, I always talk to people about appreciating the courage it takes to walk in and kind of spill your guts to a stranger. And it's hard. That's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I can understand why, you've just got this app on your phone you can just talk to. It's going to give you some advice. You'll feel better. You can vent. I can understand why people are turning to that instead of taking that hard walk up the stairs to your office to see you, the human therapist.
Yes. And I think saying give me 4 cognitive behavioral ways to reduce my anxiety, that would be fine. But then you have to take the walk. You've got to do more. I was always annoyed with rehabilitation centers. They get people sober or straight or whatever, but they did not insist on you need to do therapy to do the work. You need to go to meetings and you need to do therapy. And I always thought that was an important piece of aftercare that really needed to be solidified. I mean, they may make a recommendation, but they don't say, hey, did you make that call? Did you do it? The work is really, really important. So you've been delightful, Bridget. What haven't we covered today that you'd like to add?
Oh, all of your questions were so good and thoughtful. I would just say in the book, we talked to a privacy expert and she said, don't tell AI anything that you would not tell your gossipy cousin or your gossipy coworker. So I would just underline that, the apps and the companion apps trick us into thinking that they're safe spaces to hold things and places to put private information that we don't want anyone else to know. Not true. So don't tell don't tell an AI companion anything that you don't want the world to know about yourself.
That's great. Now is the time to remind my audience the title of your audiobook and anything else you want them to know, including your podcast.
Yeah, the book is called Love at First Prompt, AI and the Future of Intimacy. It is out this July. My podcast is called There Are No Girls on the Internet. And please check us out if you are interested in AI and want to keep the conversation going. I would love to chat.
At the end of the day, AI can be a fascinating companion, but it cannot replace the courage it takes to truly know another person and let them truly know you. The messy conversations, the disagreements, the repairs, and the vulnerability. Those aren't bugs in the relationship system. They're the very things that make love real. So the question isn't just, can AI love us? It's, are we still willing to do the work of loving each other in real life?
Please spread the word about the podcast. It is much appreciated.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.